The modern home is an illusion of control. We build pristine, sterile living spaces directly on top of vulnerable, damp concrete foundations. Look at the baseline numbers. NOAA data places Ohio in the humid continental climate zone, with annual relative humidity resting between 60 and 75%. That level of moisture acts as a perpetual, invisible load. It presses constantly against the exterior envelope of every building, looking for a way inside. When you factor in lake effect humidity from Lake Erie and the region's naturally high water tables, that atmospheric pressure compounds. In this microscopic view, you can see the dark, oval-shaped spores of ubiquitous indoor molds. These inert biological agents are already suspended in the air of every indoor environment, waiting for the right conditions to activate. Because spores are omnipresent, systemic visible mold is never a cosmetic anomaly. It is the terminal endpoint of a structural moisture failure. The environment is already primed for biological growth. The physical integrity of a property's moisture controls, the vapor barriers, the grading, the ventilation, is the only variable preventing a full-scale infestation. There is a dangerous misconception in real estate that biological contamination is restricted to aging, pre-war housing stock with deteriorating stone foundations. Homes built before 1940 were inefficient, but their drafty construction allowed trapped indoor humidity to escape naturally through the walls. Modern post-1980s construction operates differently. Builders rely heavily on highly porous, cellulose-rich materials like paper-backed drywall and engineered wood composites. To maximize HVAC energy efficiency, these modern building envelopes are sealed tight. They do not breathe. When these modern porous materials are exposed to a water leak, a rigid biological clock starts ticking. Fungal colonization triggers within a 24 to 48-hour window. If an unfinished home is exposed to heavy rain during a construction delay, moisture is often driven deep into the framing and sealed behind drywall before the house is even occupied. Modern building techniques have inadvertently engineered inescapable incubation chambers. The moment a single moisture failure occurs, the structure is designed to trap the threat inside. Effective remediation requires distinguishing between the benign molds that drift in from outside and the aggressive, toxic colonizers that dismantle building materials. Stachybotrys tartarum, commonly known as black mold, has a very specific biological requirement. It needs continuous, heavy water saturation to survive. Because of this requirement, confirming the presence of Stachybotrys serves as a forensic indicator. It proves there is a severe, active structural failure, like a burst plumbing line or ongoing foundation seepage. Aspergillus operates with far less moisture. It thrives entirely on ambient indoor humidity, requiring no direct water leak to establish a foothold. You can see this dark mold patch aggressively colonizing the face of this white indoor HVAC unit. Asparagus frequently targets these systems, effectively turning the building's climate-controlled ductwork into a forced air distribution network for spores. In unventilated spaces, trapped summer humidity forces rapid surface colonization, often remaining completely hidden, like this heavy buildup on the underside of standard furniture. Identifying the specific mold genus provides the tactical blueprint. It tells investigators exactly what kind of unseen structural failure they need to locate. Cosmetic visual inspections fail to assess the true scope of a fungal threat because they only register what has already breached the surface. Amateur surface cleaning with bleach is equally ineffective. It wipes away the visible pigment, but leaves the microscopic root systems fully intact within porous drywall. Subjective observation must be replaced with empirical, quantitative testing. The first line of defense is air quality sampling. Investigators use specialized air cassettes to capture invisible particulate matter floating directly within the breathing zone. By establishing a baseline comparison between indoor and outdoor spore concentrations, inspectors can scientifically prove whether an environment is actively contaminated. These samples undergo quantitative laboratory analysis to determine the exact density of the threat. Once the airborne threat is confirmed, investigators use thermal imaging to physically locate the hidden water source. Insulent technology detects the minute temperature variations of moisture plumes, even when they are hidden completely behind intact drywall. True remediation requires hunting this invisible data, the airborne spores and the hidden thermal moisture. You cannot solve the problem by only scrubbing what the eye can see. Ohio operates within a critical regulatory gap. The state has no standalone mold legislation and no state-mandated licensing for mold professionals. The immediate implication of this gap is severe. There are no official testing standards and no state-mandated remediation protocols to force compliance. This graphic illustrates the intersection of biological growth and legal liability. Ohio Revised Code Section 5321.04 serves as the ultimate legal backstop for disputes. This statute enforces the implied warranty of habitability, requiring landlords to maintain rental units in a fit, habitable condition. When a tenant presents formal written notice of a moisture failure, that 30-day countdown timer starts, triggering a strict legal response window for the property owner. The statute demands a reasonable repair. Painting over an outbreak without fixing the underlying plumbing or foundation leak does not meet the standard for compliance. If the owner fails to act, tenants can utilize the rent escrow process, depositing their rent directly with municipal courts rather than paying the landlord. Triggering these protections carries a heavy burden of proof. The court requires objective documentation of a systemic failure rather than subjective complaints about musty smells. In the absence of state standards, quantitative forensic data from an independent inspector is the only recognized weapon to enforce habitability laws. Real estate professionals and occupants must shift their approach. We must move away from subjective visual observation and rely entirely on objective, tactical forensic analysis. This data-driven strategy specifically protects property investors, ensuring they do not unwittingly acquire expensive biological liabilities hidden behind fresh drywall. Ohio's heavy climate load guarantees one outcome: unmonitored building structures will inevitably fail. In an environment biologically engineered to rot structures from the inside out, hope is a liability. Empirical data is your only true defense. Protect your property assets and ensure strict habitability by securing a data-driven inspection before a minor leak becomes a systemic failure. Deploy an inspector today at brand